Of us,
for sure.
because whether you relate to, oh, we have people that age and this, just the sense of music, which brings so many people together. It's just
Yeah,
different and
You
it's
should see the
heart-wrenching.
pictures. I mean, all of
Yeah.
them, they're young.
Yeah,
yeah,
Oh, that's so beautiful. Like,
yeah.
cannot be. I
they
mean,
were there to enjoy each other and music that they
yes,
loved.
they
And
kept
that's-
dance.
that's it.
Beyond.
I understand.
You're not talking about the soldier after they got killed.
Yeah.
Talking about, citizen.
Yeah. I will say that how they each get to write the hostages thank God as they're coming home, and you get to see like they hold like a sign in the helicopter. That sign from this 19-year-old Agam Berger. I mean, each one is amazing in their own way. But the fact that she could quote something from the book of Psalms and write, B'derach Amuna Bacharti, B'derach Amuna Shavti, which means like I left in the path of faith and I returned in the path of faith. And Tehillim only says, B'derach Amuna Bacharti, that I chose in the path of faith. She added, I chose faith and I'm returning with faith. For a 19-year-old to be able to write that as her message, and then of course thanking the Jewish people and the soldiers, like it's beyond.
But that's what got her through.
She kept Shabbat.
I did hear
and her
about that.
mom kept
I
Shabbat.
did hear about that. I did hear about that, which is incredible, but like separate, like a totally separate thing. I still felt like the message, it is a beautiful thing. I didn't speak it, I didn't hear from her, so I always get like that I saw. Like I saw that, I saw her hold it, and that was the message that came back. It's very, very powerful.
So they returned, her name was Danielle,
Yeah.
and the father had the A, so,
For Hashem.
Yeah.
It's really something. We're living through, I'm saying what we're seeing is unbelievable. I read one letter that somebody had written about these words that Agam had chosen and said that this was his take on the situation. He says, we haven't seen such faith like that in such a public way since the Holocaust.
Yeah.
That's what he said. Like it was just so clear. And with social media, the millions of people that saw that message like that, it was like mind-boggling when I thought about that. So we should all continue to just gain strength. I don't know. There's no other nation like us. Like, look at this, and still, like, just choosing faith, showing up. It's unbelievable.
I heard one woman this morning say because of Agam and refusing to cook on Shabbat on the tunnels or for the people that she's cooking for, that she got a hot plate and this
Oh.
Shabbat she
That's
kept
beautiful.
the hot plate and kept Shabbat.
Wow. Wow.
So
Talk about
influencing people.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Really, really something. Okay, we have some new students in the class. So who wants to do a very good job in giving Sharon a summary, a very quick summary as to what we're learning about in terms of our strive for truth? We're in the middle of this book. It's called Strive for Truth. It's just that we're striving. It takes a whole lifetime to get there. We're in the middle of a chapter on the power of giving and taking, the power of what it means to be a giver and what it means to be a taker, which we actually renamed as a receiver, to be a giver versus a receiver.
The moon and the sun.
What?
The moon and the sun.
Okay, there you go. Sharon was just in the femininity class. And now we switched into the power of ambition. So who wants to give a stab at just overall, what has been the message of what we've learned about the power of ambition? Worst comes to worst, you get it wrong and I just correct you. That's all.
This is what I remember. Yes, it can be good or bad, but we think of it, when you think ambition, I think the connotation you think is
Right.
is more negative. But then through this,
Well, we think of it as negative or we
No,
think of it
no,
as
no,
positive,
but it can be positive, it can be both.
right?
But it's so hard. It's so hard to summarize.
Amy, you want to
Yeah,
stab?
yeah, yeah.
Amy's like, she's like waving like this. Amy, go for it.
Gonna get it wrong, which is the pathetic thing. So I think what we were trying to figure out is ambition can be a good thing when it's not centered type of ambition, meaning when it's not a narcissistic behavior where you want to make more money and you never have enough and I want. But if an ambition is to help somebody, hypothetically, or to do good for somebody, then the ambition becomes more of a positive ambition than a negative ambition if it's to help people. I don't know.
Okay, that is not wrong. That is 100% right. And it's a little more nuanced than that. Yeah.
Okay.
But that is right. You said nothing wrong. Yeah.
We're all either givers or takers, and ambition goes along with that. Are you going for your ambition because you're trying to achieve something so you can give to the world, or are you just trying to do it for your own aggrandizement?
Exactly. Meaning what we established at the end of last week is that we think of ambition as a good thing. It seems to be a good thing. When I brought up the word ambition,
Depends what it.
but it depends. And we even brought in that the English word ambi comes from like a both perspective, ambi. So it could be good, it could be bad. And the nuance in this book is really beyond me, really beyond me. But what he's establishing is that it's almost like ambition for something that's not coming from the place of being a giver is like an insatiable hunger. That no matter how much you think you're filling that ambition and you're driving and you're striving and you're working towards something, if it's coming from a place of being a taker, it will never, ever be satisfied. But when you can be ambitious from a place of becoming a giver, which is work, it's not, we're going to get into it today, like what it really boils down to, what it looks like. But if you can do that, then it actually starts to feel good. It's not like just you're pouring into an empty vessel or the hunger is never satiated. We left off, Beth, I feel like at the end of last class, you're like, we need more time to delve in. So before I even jumped into the next paragraph over here, I wanted to just ask you if there was something you wanted to just start with.
It felt like we were, like I was talking to Jamie afterwards to try to bring her up to speed on.
Yeah.
The class felt like it was just the tip of what we would then like get to as far as being more, I don't want to say enlightened, more trying to navigate the outside world, outside this type of space, with kind of higher intention.
Mm-hmm.
And that sometimes it's a challenge.
Okay. So you'll have to stick through till the end of the chapter to see if the wisdom that he says is going to feel like it's starting to like be like, okay. Some of the things that he's going to say are very nuanced, and a lot of them have to do with mindset, like mentality. So we're going to get there. I don't want to like jump in and give all the solutions before we get to the end of the chapter, which it could still take some time. Yeah.
Vision sometimes can be very good. Like my daughter, I just want to share.
Brag.
She opened an Hebrew school in Manhattan, and 25 families participate. already.
Wow. Kol hakavod. That's amazing, Sarah.
You know, she do pictures and from 2 years old till 5 years old, and they learn Hebrew.
That's beautiful.
So this is a vision.
That is really something. So yes, ambition, we said ambition could be a very good thing. And I'm just going to point out what Rabbi Dessler is trying to teach, even bless you, even something that seems so good, only she can really know what the root of it was from. Only she's going to know. Nobody's really going to know. So that's where it starts to get, this is what we talk about when we talk about striving, we're talking about like midos, like the core of ourselves, like the inner characteristics morphing and growing and changing, you know?
Changing.
Yeah,
And changing.
exactly.
You know what she did also? She changed the law in Manhattan with the buses. I don't know if I told you that.
No.
When she had the first baby, she was trying to come with the stroller. And the rule was you have to take the baby out, you have to fold the stroller, and then she said, "You're crazy."
Oh my gosh.
So she went.
She's a real Israeli.
And she changed the law.
Wow.
1,000 buses changed the buses inside. They took two chairs, and now
Good for
women can
her.
go from one side to another side with the stroller and not take the baby out.
That is amazing. That is amazing. I think it would be a false statement to think that the world would be in a place of any place like we are today without any ambition. There has to be the drive, right? What Rabbi Dessler is encouraging us to do is to think a little bit deeper, to understand what is really driving it and to understand the root of it. we started saying last week that there is one inherent quality, which actually is mentioned in the book of Ethics of Our Fathers, which talks about how when one is able to be grateful, this is where the gratitude piece comes in. When one is able to be grateful, it tells us in Ethics of Our Fathers, Ezehu Ashir, who is really considered a wealthy person, Hasameach Bichelko, one who is happy with his lot, okay? So we see that there has to be something that, and remember, when we're talking about spirituality, it's a different realm, right? Like one who like feels complacent with spirituality and just like, I'm very okay, that's not a good thing. And the truth is that when that happens, when one becomes complacent with their spirituality, their physical needs are going to become much louder. It's going to be like this drawing force, right? Oftentimes when I'm craving something physical, and I always tell my students to remember this, when you want something, there's always a deeper desire inside. And it's with anything, it's with any desire, even something lustful. There's always something that is stemming from inside, right? So the question is always going to be, what is that? What is that coming from? Is it so simple that like, maybe my soul just needs a little bit more nourishment? Maybe it just needs something like that. So he starts off, so we're gonna start off today's just in revisiting this idea that it is so important to be grateful, because if we're never filled up, and this goes with both any type of accomplishment and also any type of physicality, because if we're missing the gratitude piece, if we don't have the gratitude piece, then for sure the drive is going to be so much stronger. There needs to be that gratitude component. So he says, the quality of giving inheres only in the person who is happy, not just satisfied with his lot. And I think that line in and of itself could be an entire class, but a person who is truly a giver has this quality of being happy with his lot, not just being satisfied with his lot. It doesn't say hasoveya bichalko, one who is truly happy is one who is satisfied with his lot. It says, Ezehu Ashir, who's a rich person, Hasameach Bechalko, that he's actually feeling happy with his lot. So then it really leads us to the question, which is going to be next month's topics in general, just because Purim is the month of joy. But that really is the question we have to ask ourselves. What does this mean? So he goes on to say, he's happy because his life is filled with the joys of spiritual pursuits, before whose riches all other interests pale in petty insignificance. Meaning, when he's able to recognize that the spirituality is truly filling in that open vessel, that pot, that is what's ultimately going to give over that feeling of satisfaction. In his happiness, he resembles a river in flood whose life-giving waters overflow with all of its banks. We have already seen how the heart of one in a state of joy, we actually discussed this in our first chapter, broadens to encompass all who are close to him. The more joyful the person is, the greater his desire that all of his friends have to take part in his joy. Now, this line is actually very interesting. Do you notice that the people that you feel the most joyful in life are those who are genuinely happy in their lives?
Sure.
Think about it, right? The people that are really like leaning into that joy are the people that it's much easier to feel joy for. Okay, I'm going to give you an example of something that might feel bigger than like a physical, winning the lottery type of thing. If a person is struggling to marry off a child, right? This child is like dating and dating and dating and dating and just not finding the right one. It could be very, very painful. What happens when that person's best friend marries off their child like that? Easy breezy, done. What defines the difference? There's many things, but what am I getting to over here? What defines the difference in how the friend who's struggling marrying off a child is going to feel about the friends who just married off a child like that.
You can feel happy for them,
Okay.
but make you feel even worse for
Yeah.
yourself.
Okay, true. But is there something that kind of like you're like on a seesaw with the emotions? Is there something that if this person X, Y, and Z, the person who had the E's marrying off their child, if the person X, Y, and Z does X, Y, and Z, it's easier to feel the joy.
What if the person who married off their child is always just joyful and wonderful person to be around
And grateful.
and grateful?
And grateful.
Then you can't help to be happy.
Isn't it so much easier to be happier for them?
It's easier, but there's some people who still can't.
Okay, that's the core of the mitos. Listen, I mean, you can know, but for the same, and the same example goes for a couple who's struggling with infertility year after year after year, and then this person who no problem that
And
and
jealousy too,
what?
jealousy.
So jealousy is a normal part of human nature. It is normal to be jealous, but what I'm trying to show you is that it's much easier to feel happy for the other person. There's a lot of inner development that has to happen in such a case regardless, but it's easier to feel happier for that person when they themselves are so filled with gratitude. If they themselves, yes, if they themselves is something that they take it for granted,
Right.
then it's harder to feel that same joy because you're like, hello, do you not realize the gifts that you've been given? Yeah.
It's the same for somebody who like demands a lot. I was in the service industry and I like had one passenger who was so needed so many things, but every time I did something, thank you, Gail. Do you mind doing something else? Thank you. And like was so lovely. I was like, what else can I do? You know,
Just makes
but
it
somebody else who's just like so grumpy, you're like, you don't want to do anything for them.
Right.
So it goes into so many different.
Different arenas for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Absolutely.
Reread the line about.
Yeah.
Easier to, can you reread it?
Yes, we have already seen how the heart of one in a state of joy broadens to encompass all who are close to him. The more, and then it's a semicolon, the more joyful the person, the greater his desire that all his friends take part in his joy. So it is, this is what I want to get to. So it is with the giver. Firmly rooted in the spiritual life, you have to realize we already established that the spiritual life, the pursuit of spirituality going is good. Okay. So always the spiritual life ambition is always going to be something that the more ambition for it, the better. So firmly rooted in the spiritual life, his eyes ever turn towards its heights. He sees in everything, great and small, the loving kindness of God, which are unending, and his mercies, which have no limit. Consequently, his joy in these gifts knows no bounds, and his life is unendingly happy. If you think about this from a place of somebody being constantly on this rat wheel, which I don't know, it's interesting. I've gotten into some discussions with it recently with people. Like looking at the human race, like percentage, give me a percentage, like how many people do you think are just content? How many people do you think are constantly on that rat wheel? How many people, like Lynn always says, like how many people do you think it takes maturity and age to be able to suddenly have an epiphany? But it really wasn't like that until they hit a certain age. So I don't know. But if you think about it, how many people really fall into this category of truly recognizing that everything, every stop, every penny, every accomplishment, gratitude, fill. It leads us to living in a different space.
Different mindset.
Yeah. But I don't know. I don't find that the society, like we established last week, I don't find that society at large is like this.
No, like they said, everyone's in a slumber. We're
Right.
like, we're caught up in that rat wheel, whatever you call it, like achieving these outs. Like it's so,
Right.
and then you're pulled to it too. So even if you're trying
Mhm.
to do this, I feel like
It's like,
it's
like I was
it
pulling you back in.
pushes you.
Right.
Well, that's what I was-
Devora?
Sorry, Gail, that's what I was trying, at the end of last
Yeah.
time. That was the.
The rat wheel of life and how we're supposed to, right.
How do you how
And-
to resist this
Jump
lumber.
How do you, and it's bigger than that because it's also like, we also have to live, right? So we don't want to either look like here we are, like shrinking back while like the rest of the people around us seem to be like, you know, so it's so important to understand and it's so nuanced. Yeah, I want to call on
Devora?
this, Debbie,
Devora?
yes, this.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's such a high level, I feel like, in terms of coping with something bad that happens to you, to be so happy for the other person. I'm thinking of
Okay.
I'm thinking right now of the hostage families. So happy that some are returned and so crushed that their family member isn't. You can't, and that's on a deeper scale, but it's so difficult. So, yeah, I just think,
We don't have to
thinking like,
deal with that
is
right now.
Hashem, no, but Hashem's plan, like going to that place to cope with all of it is wonderful and helpful, but we're still human. So that's my only thought.
Absolutely. And these are very, very high levels. But I just want to say that's a separate topic. What you're bringing up is actually, it is addressed in this book. It's a separate topic. What the point that I want you to focus on from that piece is not so much about the coping, because that's a separate topic. It's a whole topic in here about when people go through challenges and struggles and what that's supposed to be. Separate topic. The point I want you to
Okay.
focus on is how you feel around the person who is so filled with the gratitude and the joy. That's what I want you to focus on, is the midos of the other person and how we feel around them. It's a flip of
Okay.
the lens, okay? So what you're saying is 100% true. Yes.
Even in the Gemara, they say, שהשדה שלך פורח, אל תביא את אח שלך. When your field is blowing and growing, don't bring your brother. This is the Gemara said,
Right. You're speaking to the point of jealousy.
yes. So.
I'm sorry,
avoid-
say that again.
When your field is blooming and blossoming, don't bring your brother. Like, be careful to show off your successes to people around you. Yeah.
Because they're jealousy.
I think what Deborah is
Yeah.
saying is like a nuanced difference.
It's very, very nuanced. Yeah.
Not disputing jealousy at all, but I think what Deborah is saying is if the person is always filled with gratitude for everything they have, then it makes other people
Correct.
happy for them.
Correct. It's specifically not focusing on the jealousy piece. It's trying to show how other people around feel towards people who are so just calm and serene and grateful for each piece and are not, okay, I got that. Forget about the gratitude. Now I'm on to the next, and we know people like this. It's like they don't even pause and reflect in their gratitude of their success, because now it's like, well, that was achieved. Let me just step it up one notch now. And they just never get off this wheel. So this point that he's saying, that Rabbi Dessler is saying, is much more about the other person and to notice how we feel around that person. Obviously, he's saying take heed and be that person, but he's trying to say, how do we feel around that person? I'm going to call on you in a second, Valerie.
So I almost feel like it's not the specific instance that you're talking about, like the one whose child
It's for sure not. That was one little example, but yeah.
What I'm saying is, it's thinking about how that person is all the time, not just
Oh,
around a
exactly.
specific event.
Thank
So like,
Thank
how,
you.
how do you feel? Like, it's kind of like the people you're drawn to and want to spend time with, thinking about that. But this is just one aspect of that, like a person who you feel like is always just grateful for whatever it is. And so when they have something exceptional happen like that, it's easier to feel happiness for them because that's how they are. They're grateful all the time.
Yeah, thank you. I think that is very well said. It's about an overall feel, not just specifically about that event, how they are on a general day to day. Yes, Jamie.
So very relating to what she's saying. in,
Yes.
like, a practical way, like I find the more I work on myself and the more I live in gratitude, those kinds of people come more in my life, and then you just get more and more filled with that because it just spreads. And it's
Yes.
just like you're drawn to that energy and that. type of
Yes. Yes, exactly. Beautifully said. Yeah.
I totally agree with everybody, but.
And.
Yes. Sometimes it's easier. I feel like I'm generally a happy person, but but I do realize that sometimes I forget it at home.
Hmm.
And just like remembering, just to bring it home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's always that's always a struggle, and you're human. And that I think majority of people would say that, sometimes this is why I said about the salad last week, and preparing the dinners for everybody else. Like it is in general, it is much harder to first secure everything that's going on in home. It's much easier to be, because the people who are nearest and dearest to us are also the people who trigger us the most. And there's a lot of psychological understanding to that, but that is true. Even though the people that you love the deepest, they're also the most triggering. Any emotion that feels so strong also comes along with the negative pull. So it is much easier. You get a lot more glorified and everything from outside of the home, and inside the home, it's between you and the walls and your family. Like, of course it's less glorified. Rabbi Dessler, I believe, was actually the one who always used to say that kindness begins at home. I'm pretty sure that was him who used to always say that. Like, whenever you have to ask yourself a question, and this has really been something that has been my guiding light my whole life since I got married, but and like I say, sometimes I win and sometimes I lose, but it has always been my mantra. And that is, like, first of all, if it's not something, most things can be replaced. Like your role, maybe we even said this in our femininity class, but like your role in the home is not something that's replaceable. Anything else outside of the home, like, I promise someone else can do it. I really do. And sometimes, like, the mother, or your role as the mother, that's not replaceable. That's not. So in general, just keeping that in mind, and it's really, really, really hard. It's a challenge every day, every moment. It's so much easier to be calm with people who are not inside of our home, and then to snap at the people who are inside of our home. It's much easier, everything. So yes, 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 and yes. And then if that's what you're taking away from this, then your focus is, okay, now how do I bring a little bit more of this into my home? And that's hard. That's very, very, very hard.
And you also have so many more expectations of the people in your home.
True also.
And sometimes they meet them and sometimes they don't.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just get hit by something and it's like, wow, I
Right.
have something really to appreciate here.
Right.
And you have to remind yourself.
It's so true. I love what you said about expectations. If we drop all expectations, isn't it so much easier to just be so much happier? Like, so why do we expect that? But as humans, we do. Exactly.
Devorah.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just have one other quick thing, going backwards a minute. I thought that the video you did for Facebook after last week's class, you summarized it so beautifully that I think her name is Sharon, should go and try to listen to that, because you got it. Like, I was like,
90 seconds. I have 90 seconds.
yes, I was struggling a little bit. And then when I listened to that, I'm like,
Oh, good.
okay. And that was such a
Oh,
great
I'm so happy
summary.
to hear that, Valerie.
Yeah,
it was
a
worth doing
great,
just for that. I'm so happy.
it was a great summary. So she should try to listen to that.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you. Yeah.
I just got here.
Work. Feels like it goes back to the point about slumber a little bit,
Mhm.
because the way that you said it today is nuanced, different than like what we got to last week.
Okay.
Which is, that it's harder to be happy for the people that are just more,
Mhm.
and they're never like pausing
Mm-hmm.
to be grateful and celebrate that like success. It's just climbing. That was a little bit of what we were hitting on last week
Mhm.
about the slumber, that it's just go,
Yeah.
more. And it reminds me of something I've shared a little bit about, like what was not working for me in corporate America after 20 years, that it was just sort of being surrounded by that energy.
Mhm.
And it took me a while to realize, like, I don't want to be part of this anymore, that I was even in that, like, it's almost like you're being hypnotized a little bit. But also the way you've shared it today makes me think of, I have a sibling, maybe two, that kind of operate that way, that like the family's version of success is that, like, monetary house, cars, that kind of thing. And it doesn't like feel good. Like you're not like, it's harder to be happy for them, even though you like genuinely loved them and like I only want the best for my sister, but it kind of doesn't feel as good to spend time with my sister as it does spending time with you. and your family, like, it just, and I've always kind of struggled with that and felt guilty about it. I'm sorry, I'm sort of oversharing. Like, I've always sort of felt guilty, like, oh, I'd rather, like, so much rather spend, I mean, my husband feels the same way, like, and I think it's what you're saying.
It's the energy.
It's like, but see, I've always thought it was the energy, but it's more than, you're being more specific now, it's about that, like, genuine gratitude, I mean, so I could go on, but I think you really, like, I'm
That's-
sorry, there's
that-
epiphany happening.
Yeah, okay, good. I'm so happy. It is very interesting. Yeah, it does.
We're all
Yeah.
nodding
Okay.
because we're.
People.
Yeah.
How do you share that?
I have a-
How do you, which piece?
Like,
Can I tell?
inspire family members or close people.
Yeah, so remember, you can't ever change anybody else. There's nothing, I know, this is the hardest part.
That's what I write.
But even if they want to change, you can't change somebody.
No, 'cause
You
they-
can't. The only
they
thing you could
don't
change is a
have-
light bulb.
Their wiring
Yeah.
is not,
For your
their
interaction.
wiring is not there.
Yeah,
know,
but
our-
even for somebody who says, like, I'm ready, like, change me. You still can't change them. You still can't change them. You can show them the tools, but ultimately they're going to have to do the work.
But
So-
sometimes you can change his mind, not change the person, but you can change your mind.
I mean, you can change somebody's opinion. You
Yeah.
can maybe have a conversation and like
And
they'll have like,
sometimes you can say, you know what, I'm sorry, I thought like that and now I'm thinking like that,
mhm.
and it's gonna happen.
Okay, maybe. I don't know. When girls come to me and they're asking me their dating questions, when it's something like he's really nerdy, like he dresses very nerdy, like he's not like he's nerdy. I don't know what to say. I'm like, that's fine because that you can change. You'll go get him a new pair of glasses, you'll go buy him a new pair of jeans, you get him a swagger jacket, we're good. Okay, but if a girl comes to me and says, I don't know, I just find that he's like really lazy. Like he just has these, oh my gosh, this girl, one of my staff members this summer, we're hiking in like the middle of Utah. And she's like talking to me about this guy she's dating and like not one nice thing to say about his character traits. I'm like, you're currently dating this guy? This is over. Like like you're not changing him. If he is this way now, this is not happening. She ended the relationship. Like it was so clear to me. You're not changing somebody's character traits. You're not.
No, the character you cannot change.
Exactly, but that's what we're talking about. And this class is only about character. Mine's opinions, fine, you could change someone, work with them. But so to your point is that's why, and as a 40-year-old, a wise 40-year-old, that I can stand up today and say, but like I could not have said this the same way 10, 15 years ago, the same way I feel it now. Like you're not changing anybody until you change yourself. The biggest way to make the biggest impact in this world is by changing those nuances in yourself. And when you think, but nobody noticed, nobody commented, you think like, no, that's where you're probably getting the biggest accolades. In the smallest nuances that are so subtle that you know that you've changed, that's probably where the biggest accolades are going to end up coming from.
Hunter said.
Exactly. Right, exactly. That's where the biggest change is going to come. So if this is resonating and we keep on thinking, but how do we? So, I mean, I am far from perfect over here. Like I said, maybe some of you are. Like it's very, I have, trust me, I really mean this. You guys laugh at me when I say this, but I really mean this. Like in all probability, some of you probably are further along in this journey than I am, even in the spiritual pursuit.
And they said when you're 7, you're gonna be like that when you're gonna be 70.
Okay, but wait, hold on. I'm just in the middle of saying that even if we are making strides and our immediate reaction is like, okay, how do I apply this? Everybody, grow more, slow down a little more, take one step, little baby step, one. And then when you start to feel like you're really, there, you will probably start to notice that shifts have happened around you as well.
Definitely.
And it's the same as a parent, and it's the same as a friend, and it's the same as a spouse. It always works the same way. Yeah.
Laura used to always say, and I'm very grateful for it. I think that's where I started my journey with grateful years ago. When there she said, the best thing you can do, like you said, besides work on yourself, is show gratitude to the people in your home, including the spouse, And little by little, that'll grow on them and you're gonna see change. And I have.
Yeah, see,
Or maybe
exactly,
Right, I love that.
Maybe
And-
especially your spouse.
exactly.
Yes,
No,
especially.
I'm serious.
Especially your spouse. And I used to talk about this course all the time, but now I'm not invested in it the same way like I was last year. But you remember this course I told you about called Sod HaAdam, The Secret of Man, that I was taking?
Mhm.
So she talks my main takeaway, which took weeks to get through. She talks about this exercise, which she calls a Targil Amun. Amun, remember we started off today's class with Agam saying like, Bacharti Amuna. Amun comes from the same word as Amuna. Amuna means faith. Amun is also a craft. A craft. Like there's a certain craft to it. A mother is called an aim. Okay, it's from the same root. Mothers have more of a chance to be able to do this than fathers because of this feminine energy that we have. I have seen it done with fathers also, but what she talks about is that when you're seeing an issue specifically with a child that you're struggling, your job is to create a targil emun, which is only after she gives you a whole instruction how you write out all the negative and you get it all out onto paper and you write it and you write it and you write it. You create this document with the best picture of this person, of this child. She's talking about a child. Your favorite picture where they like you see the goodness in them. So if a person is struggling with a child, and the goodness was 5 years ago, you take a picture of them 5 years ago. You put it at the top of this paper, and it's a whole formula that she gives, but it's all focusing on their inner depth of goodness. And the stories, first of all, I've seen it in my own life. I've seen it in the lives of friends who have done this, and the stories that she shares are mind-boggling. How the change that you're seeing in the other people, she didn't say anything, nothing.
Right.
It's all from the way that the mother is wiring. It's all from, and when you start to see the child in that light and you're focusing on that goodness, the goodness grows. It's literally like nourishing, which is so scary. It's so scary because the responsibility is so strong. And how many times our mind just automatically goes into the negative. Why does she have to be so negative? Why does she have to be such a complainer? Why is this child so lazy? Why, like, that's how automatically our minds go. What she says is you cannot have that narrative. That is the danger in what's going to create. And it's exactly. So that was like a whole year's course. It was like unbelievable, but it goes back to this idea of the change has to happen from within.
And it's modeling, it's knowing what's there and making the changes so that it can be. I'm dealing with a person who is not quite grateful. And I think you see me as somebody who has some dose of it from myself, and it's really hard to project that and
Yeah.
encourage because
Yeah.
I mean, is the original psychology.
Yes, Torah
Like,
is
that's
the
like,
original
I'm just going back
psychology.
to that, like,
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
Yeah, it is the original psychology
You know,
book. Yeah.
I talked to you about like the energy stuff.
Yes.
So with my acrobats long ago, I talked to them about the difference like that they felt when they were performing, when everybody was cheering for them versus when everybody was just like,
Mm.
limp.
Yeah.
And they could, the performers did better when they felt the energy from everybody around them.
Mhm.
It goes like in so many different places.
I know. I'm like, Moshe just finished up his like basketball season, and this last game, I think I shared with you after that class, it was so intense. But I'm always like, when they boo for the other team before they get to do their free shot, and I'm just like, I can't boo. That's so mean. And like everybody's like screaming boo because they're trying to like mess up the energy, and I'm like, I can't do this, Even for the other team, I'm also the mom who's like cheering for the other team. The lady next to me is like, that was the other team that just scored. I'm like, I'm still happy for them. What is wrong with me? I don't know, but yeah, energy definitely does make a difference for sure. Okay, so I think I want to move on to this. I'm gonna move on to the next paragraph over here. So this was really just about that the fullness of this joy and happiness, that it creates such a flow. It creates such a positive energy, and thus the urge to do good to others, to make others happy, is not produced by a lack or a deficiency like the evil desires that we spoke about earlier. It is out of an act of the ecstatic devotion by which the happy man is attached to the source, is attached to the godliness, is attached to the source of he who gives. And when that feels full, when that bucket is full, it's much easier for it to come from a place of being a giver. Otherwise, it's all stemming from a place of taker. So I just want to summarize this last point. That is that if one is looking to say, well, I don't know, maybe I am doing a lot out of being more of a taker than a giver, right? Like I think of myself as being a real giver, but I don't know, like some of the stuff that we've learned does kind of think like I have questioned myself many times since we started learning this. Like my actions, I'm like, wait a second, is this giving or taking? Is this giving or taking? So when you start to have those conversations within your mind, that's also like, you know that you're starting to grow, because up until we started learning this, are you ever defining yourself as a giver or a taker? So what he's saying over here is that this point of understanding that if you want to make the shift to become more of a giver, you have to attach yourself to the source. When you recognize everything, all of my gifts, all of my achievements, all my spiritual achievements, all my physical achievements, my whole life, everything that's coming from the source. And then I want to give, that's a very high level. That's the goal. Whenever you want to start to make that connection, go back to the capital S, to the capital source. Okay, even something, let's just go to achievements or to like, accolades or whatever, to the next degree, to the next level, to the next bonus, whatever it is. How do you make that shift? You want the next bonus, but when you go back to the source, when you do this like point to point to point, okay, hold on. First of all, thank you, God. That was not my own doing. That was completely you. You allowed all the things to align so that I could perform, so that I could get this bonus, so that I can, and then here's where the real question is, so that you can what? So you can be a giver. Exactly. And if you can fill in the blank with so that I can be a giver, that's the goal. That's the goal.
I'm always asking, I would say, just give me to give.
That's a beautiful prayer. That's a beautiful prayer.
And I want to be on this side, not the other side.
Yeah, we have to strive towards it. Sometimes it gets very murky. It gets very, very murky. I just want to say that the last line here, and Debbie, this goes to your point, but like he does end this by saying like, this is the level of the greatest holy people, meaning like this is a very high level. And I think we have to recognize that. It doesn't mean get discouraged, but just recognize like if you're starting to feel like, oh, like I'm not gonna, like it's a high level to be able to do this.
That's what we're
Yeah.
striving.
It's a striving. We strive. Okay.
Deborah, I have to
Yes.
make you just laugh for a minute. So my husband was working at home when we first started talking about givers and takers. He happened to walk by when we were talking about that.
Yes.
So our grandson was home recently. I don't even remember the conversation, but he's like, Mom is learning about being a giver and a taker. Like, are you being a giver or a taker? It was the funniest thing. I'm sorry, I just have to tell.
That's amazing.
It was just funny.
That's so cute. Okay, see, they watch everything we do. That's so cute. Okay, we're getting into a very, very interesting paragraph over here. Okay, it took me a long time to like understand what this paragraph was saying. Listen to this. Our rabbis have already made this distinction clear to us by saying, now he quotes, greater is he who enjoys the labor of his own hands than one who fears God. You're like, that sounds exactly opposite of what you've been saying. Exactly. That's what I said too. So he says, we've already established that greater, hold on, I want to just see 1 second. Greater is one who enjoys the labor of his own hands, meaning his own doings, than one who fears God. So we have to understand what this is saying, because clearly it's telling us something. I'm going to read this whole paragraph and then we're going to divide it up. As we mentioned in chapter 3, he who enjoys the work of his hands is the person of spiritual integrity, who always wants to give more than he takes. So actually, I said I was going to finish the paragraph. Wait. That is to say, the possessor of the quality of giving. And why is he greater than one who acts out of fear of God, one who is a fearer of God? Because as we have seen, the giver acts out of love of God. And as is well known, maybe you didn't realize this, but as is well known, the one who loves God stands higher than the one who merely fears God. This paragraph totally blew me away, okay? Because what it's saying over here, what it's establishing over here, is that one who truly feels grateful of the efforts that have come out of his own hands, the key to it is, well, is he grateful to the source? If he is truly grateful in recognizing, oh my gosh, God has given me X, Y, and Z. I have certain gifts. I have certain talents. I have certain skill. I have all the abilities that I need to do. Okay. And now I do. And now I take satisfaction in what my hands have done by recognizing, God, you've given me the gifts and I have done. That level of gratitude and understanding, he says, actually comes from a place of love for God. And it's a higher level, the Talmud teaches us, it's a higher level to love God than to fear God. So do you understand the way he breaks it out? Because when you hear this sentence, like, oh, one who is, so grateful for the acts of his own hands is greater than one who fears God. It could come, you could think, well, that just means that he's very self-absorbed. Like, how is that greater than somebody
Can you
who
read that
fears God?
sentence again that you're referring to?
Yeah, this is the quote.
It said anything about the guys with his hands said anything.
It
about
says-
loving God.
It says it doesn't. That's the nuance. It says greater is he who enjoys the labor of his own hands than one who fears of God. But what he's saying is that one who truly enjoys the labor of his own hands, asterisk, meaning he's understanding the source and connecting it to that spiritual pursuit. I think the caveat over here would be, well, if he's just enjoying the labor of his own hands and thinks that it's a tribute to his own power,
Right.
then
Then
then it's not.
yeah.
Okay, so that's the part that's missing, but that's what he's explaining here, that that's what this line is teaching us.
It's like integrating all of it.
Yes,
making you
exactly.
That highest.
Exactly. So whenever there is an accomplishment, and I think that I shared that I'm sure I shared that story with you, but after my first Project Inspire retreat, and I was so petrified and I was so scared, and I did it, and I was on the way driving home from it, and the first person I called was, well, after my husband, but I called my father. And my first thing before my father said, how was it? I said, Abba, it was such a success. And the first words that he said to me were, remember whose success that really is. Remember who gave you the tools that you needed to have that success. Remember who gave you a person. Remember who made you a personable person. Remember who gave you a good oration skills. Remember where it came from. And then he said to me, and never, ever forget. And I remember that car ride just being like, I am so grateful that at that moment he said that to me. What?
It's humble.
It was totally humbling, but he was just saying, remember, like, as good as you're feeling right now, this wasn't your success. This was God's success. You activated it. You took something that he gave you in your hands and you turned it into something, but don't ever forget where that really came from. And I think that's really what this is saying. Yeah. Oh, you're just stretching. Okay. That was okay. So that's very, very, very important. And I think also just to explain this piece, which I think just shouldn't go without being explained, is that whenever we talk about love, it's always a higher level than fear. Because when you have a certain fear, you're acting out of like,
Feel.
you're acting out of fear.
Yeah.
You're acting out of like, what's going to come to bite me? Is this going to end? Is this going to be cut off? Is there going to be like a punishment that's going to happen to me because of this? When you're acting out of love, you're acting because there is such a deep connection to the other, in this case to God, but to the other person, that you don't want to lose that. You're giving because you love. Think about it even within a relationship, right? If you're always acting out of fear, you cannot compare to what that feels like in a relationship where you're acting out of true love, right? So it's a higher level. So when you're thankful and you're joy-filled and you're connecting to the source of it all, that's love. That's not fear, right? So that's a very high level. I'm going to read his last paragraph because then it's going to end this chapter. We still have to consider the status of compassion and sympathy. This is going to start a fascinating topic next week. These are yet certainly among the highest qualities of mankind, compassion and sympathy. Yet they do not seem to fit into this category that we described above. The person who has these feelings is troubled by his neighbor's distress. He feels his neighbor's lack as his own, and by helping his friend, he is, so to speak, helping himself. He assuages his own pain. Is this not the same as experiencing a lack and its fulfillment, which we have found to characterize the wrong type of ambition? This will be discussed in the next chapter. Oh my gosh, do you understand what he's saying? He's saying that sympathy and compassion, where are they really stemming from? Is it coming from a place to just make us feel better? Or is it really coming from a place of being a giver? I just picked up a book that was recommended to me by somebody who I'm close with. It's called Anti-Empathy. I'm like, what is this? And I had to pick it up because she recommended it to me. So I went to the library and I picked it up. And it is the premise to the book is just so interesting, where he talks about how sometimes we're doing empathy for the wrong reasons. We're trying to be an empath. It's almost similar to what this is saying, but it's not really for the real reasons. Sometimes empathy, we're going to get into this next week. Sometimes empathy is actually more for ourselves than for the other person.
But is it always bad?
Well, I'm not going to even describe his book. I'm in the middle of it. I didn't even finish his
Yeah,
book.
I just wonder, like, when I started off my career, I used to,
Is,
run-
hold on, I just want to understand. Is what always bad?
feeling empathy.
No, feeling empathy is
No, no,
good.
no, because it makes you feel better.
Oh, so that's what we're going to divide. We're
Right,
going to
because-
divide.
so
We're going to
I
get into that
started-
next week.
Sometimes you need life to be put into perspective, right? Like, just when you're like thinking about all the things that are wrong, you know, the little things that get you upset. And then you see how challenged other people are, and it makes you feel better in the sense that it kind of allows you to let go of things. That just
That I
aren't
agree
that
with for
important.
sure. For sure.
So on the one hand, you feel empathy for somebody whose situation is so much worse than yours, but it makes you feel better because you recognize it changes your perspective.
100%.
What's really important.
100%.
So in
100%.
that kind of situation, sometimes it helps you be a better person
Better
because it
person.
lets you
Yeah.
drop the things that just aren't important because you see. how
100%. There is
challenged
value. If you want to talk about nuance, get ready for the next chapter.
I was gonna say this.
It is beyond. And I also want to say that a lot of it has to do with sometimes we act in ways, and there's nothing wrong with this. It actually the Mishnah tells us that mitoch shelo lishma balishma. Pirkei Avot, Ethics of Our Fathers, actually tells us that sometimes when something comes from a place of not doing it for the right reason, but you do it anyways, it's going to ultimately come to a place of doing it for the right reason. That we're going to see. That a lot of times these behaviors have to come, they have to stem from doing it for the wrong reason, but when you do it for a little bit of time, you're like, that felt so good. And then ultimately, little growth, you start doing it for the right reason. A very simple example, we'll divide this up next week. I'll end with this idea, but a very simple example of this is like a child, right? If you see a child and you want them to be able to get out of bed in the morning, but they're not, they're struggling, okay? So what do? You create a chart and you say, listen, really, in an ideal world, I need you to want to get out of bed. But right now, if you need the incentive to get you out of bed, let's start with there. And sometimes that incentive will start to say, hey, you know, this feels really good. It feels really good to get out of bed and to make my bed and to feel like a mensch in this universe. I like this feeling, right? That's the goal. So we are not so different than those children. And sometimes we have to be able to do something that feels good for the sake of feeling good so that we can get to a higher level of what it might feel like. So next week, we're going to divide that up.
Is that an example of, I can't even think of an example of empathy for the wrong reason.
So we're going to explain it next week.
Okay, 'cause
There,
I can't even grasp that.
yeah, there is, but it's
Yeah, same.
very, very
Example
deep. And it's,
like that.
I would say like, it's striving towards,
Okay.
like, I don't even think, but it's important to realize that that it exists. It's very interesting. Yes. Any questions, comments, thoughts before we end class? And then I have to zip because I have an urgent dentist appointment for a child. Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna end this recording. I know I don't usually have to run out of here so fast, but today I do.